Hi guys, today I wanted to talk about a subject that may be a little more sensitive to some of you. It won't be relevant to everybody, but there are some people that it will be very relevant to. And that subject is self-care. And although it's something which is a side effect of a lot of different emotional disorders, I'm going to talk about it from the viewpoint of health anxiety. So firstly, let me say that, like I said a moment ago, this isn't something that will apply to all of you. I would imagine a lot of it is dependent on what stage of your health anxiety you are in and how long you have had it. Another contributing factor is how many people live in your home and what responsibilities you've got. So I'm going to talk about this with the viewpoint of the worst case scenarios, and there are a lot of people that are living in this worst case scenario. So I've had health anxiety for a long time, and as I'm sure many of you have experienced, there are periods that you can go through where your health anxiety can be so out of control that you become paralyzed, and you start to neglect some of the things that you used to do on automatic. So I would imagine, as I'm speaking now, there are a certain amount of people that will end up watching this video at some point, who, if they turn and look around themselves, are living in a nest that they have built for themselves, and they will potentially be sat right at the moment, regardless of the time of day, in their pajamas, and they'll be surrounded by half-drunk mugs of tea and coffee. The sofa will be covered in empty crisp packets and cake. There will be a huge pile of clothes heaped up somewhere that you, excuse me, there's a hair on my eye. There'll be a huge heap of clothes either piled up in your bedroom or a laundry basket, and you haven't been able to face dealing with it. So as a result, you've run out of clothes. And because you've run out of clothes, you'll either be sat there in pyjama bottoms because you cannot be bothered to get dressed because there are no clothes, or perhaps you are wearing clothes but they're about 3 days old and you haven't had them washed recently because you cannot face doing it. And maybe, like in your kitchen, there's a huge stack of plates that go up to the ceiling that are growing mould, and the house smells funny. The bin is overspilling, and you've started to decant the rubbish into carrier bags because you cannot be bothered or face emptying the bin. You haven't taken a shower in days. You no longer brush your hair. You haven't made your bed probably in months. You probably stopped changing your bedding because you thought, well, what's the point? You haven't hoovered up in months. You either eat too much junk food because you don't want to cook because everything's dirty, or you stop eating because dealing with the mountain of washing is too much. You may have stopped going out because what's the point? Your anxiety gets in the way of it all. And it's just a never-ending list, you know, neglecting bills, just not opening them, you know, everything really, everything that you would normally do, you've just thought, well, what is the point? And it's easy to slip into this because I think when we suffer from heightened anxiety, especially health anxiety, we go into a survival mode, and we say that all of those things are trivial. We can put them all aside, and what we feel that we need to do first is get our mind into a better place. So we tell ourselves that we will resume doing all of our housework and self-maintenance, you know, looking after our bodies and, you know, taking care of the way that we look. We'll resume doing all of that at the point that we start to feel better. And for a lot of people, they might be in denial about the fact that all the time they've had health anxiety, it's not got any better, it's probably just got worse. So essentially you're waiting for one day that you wake up and you suddenly realise your health anxiety has disappeared and you can actually start addressing the things that you have neglected. And I was in that situation. I was in it for a long time. You know, I think I slept on the sofa for probably about 9 months. I put on probably about 3-4 stone. I had digestive issues because I wasn't eating properly. I wasn't sleeping properly. I stopped interacting with people because it seemed too much effort, and I completely let myself go. So I suppose part of this video is essentially a word of caution to those of you who are in that situation and are putting off addressing those issues until your mind is in a better place. If you have health anxiety, that journey of recovery, I assure you, is going to be a long one. So you need to accept the fact that all the time that's passing that you're not addressing these issues, they're accumulating and they're getting bigger and bigger. And when you start to try and address recovery, the one thing that gets in the way of being able to do that quite often is the fact that you've let it go for so long that now you're intimidated by the responsibility of changing your way of life in order to recover, because it means addressing all of these things. And this is the way that I dealt with it. I dealt with it by sweeping everything under the carpet, and not literally, obviously, although I would have done if I could have. But that's how I did it. I neglected everything because I was in survival mode, you know, and at the point that I realised that I'd recovered, I was faced with a lot of obstacles that could have been prevented. The biggest one was the fact that as soon as I felt that I'd recovered from health anxiety, I looked into the mirror and I didn't recognise the person looking back at me because they were about 3 stone heavier. They'd neglected their hair. They didn't wear makeup anymore. You know, and those things, like, they seem trivial at the time. You think, well, you know, what does it matter if I don't brush my hair? Those things at the time seem trivial, but when you actually start to correct the problems, they can take a long time to correct, you know, especially things like weight. If you've lost too much weight or you've gained too much weight. If you've dropped a standard that you used to keep, then it can be quite shocking when suddenly you realise that you've changed too much. So the downside to this strategy of telling yourself you'll do it when you feel better is the fact that it's fairly logical to understand that allowing your home and your body to get into a mess isn't going to necessarily make you feel better or more motivated. So these are things that you really need to start focusing on. It's important, I think, in this situation, if you do look around the room at yourself and your situation and see yourself as somebody else looking at you, it's easy to think to yourself, what have I done? What am I doing? You know, and that can breed a feeling of low self-esteem. You know, what's the point? I've already ruined everything. So it's important to be kind to yourself and recognise the only reason this has happened is because of the disorder, not because of you. You didn't choose this. You've just been trying to survive. So be kind with yourself when you try to address this issue. And I think what happens is with health anxiety is we're so focused on these internalized sensations and symptoms that we shut out the outside world, and we stop doing a lot of the things that we used to do. And the problem with doing that is the fact that if you do not address the issue now with your health anxiety and relearn the fact that you can operate and actually undertake tasks of maintenance, whether that's for yourself or your home, unless you address the fact that you are actually capable of doing those things at the same time as having health anxiety thoughts, then it's going to lead in quite a negative direction. And the kind of direction that heads in is perpetuating a lower self-esteem, so you're going to start feeling worthless because you're not accomplishing anything. And when you go then and look in the mirror to actually present yourself or get yourself ready to go out somewhere, you start having a warped perception of who you think you are, and you look at yourself and think, look at what you've done to yourself, and that breeds more low self-esteem. If this goes on for long enough, two things can happen. Not that they always happen, but they can happen. You can choose not to go outside and essentially become, to a degree, agoraphobic, or agoraphobic, as I think it's meant to be pronounced, and stop going outside so nobody has to see you. You can stop, inviting people to your home for the same reasons. And one of the main things that will happen is you would develop depression. If you are suffering from health anxiety and it feels like hell, the last thing you want on top of that is to develop depression, because that will pretty much, sorry, let my accent slip there, that will pretty much take away all motivation to want to recover. So if you do not address that situation now, then you won't be able to address it later once you develop depression. You didn't bring this upon yourself. It's a disorder that you suffer from, that you develop for numerous reasons, usually trauma-based, and this is just your coping mechanism. So you need to develop a new coping mechanism that will be better for you and will breed feelings of self-esteem, high self-esteem. If you can establish a new routine that you are taking care of yourself and your body and the way that you look, and you are taking care of your home so that everything is organized and gives you the best opportunity to be in a good mental state, then once you've developed that routine and you're used to it, you can actually use the neglection side of your health anxiety as a good indicator of your mental health. So for me, I use this all the time. If I find that I've been doing really well, and then all of a sudden I look around the house and I realise the house has got out of control and I haven't washed my clothes for 3 days or changed my clothes, and I think, well, what's the point in putting on makeup because nobody's going to see me anyway, then it's a good indicator to me that something is going wrong and I need to address it and correct it quickly, because otherwise it will just continue and progress and get more and more out of control. So I think that's something that would be advisable for those of you who are stuck in that situation, maybe eating beans out of a tin and going to the shop in your slippers. You need to address the fact that these are indicators of your mental health. So I hope that might be helpful to some people. Don't beat yourself up over it. This isn't your fault, and it's not about what other people think of you. You can hide it from other people, but looking after yourself is it's about you knowing about it. It doesn't matter if other people are unaware. It's about the fact that you're aware of it, and treat yourself with kindness. And try and nurture yourself like you would nurture another person. Anyway, if you are in this situation and you've let things go, please share with other people the depths that you've gone to with neglect, self-neglect, and don't be ashamed. Share it so that other people can benefit from knowing where that path leads. Okay, so thank you very much, and I shall speak to you guys next time. Bye bye.